the real agenda of educating black children.
I take them to my library, my personal library. Take a book. Pick any book. Read it. If you don't like it, come back, get a different book. You don't have to read every book the first time you pick, when you first pick it up. You don't have to read a book for leisure if you don't like it. That kind of defeats the purpose. They come back, finish this. Can I get another one?
Another one.
We talk about books.
There are some things that are really troubling. And one of the biggest things is that I discovered that black kids, or many black kids, don't like reading. Now, obviously, as a black author and a father, that is a tremendous concern for me, and forced me to ask the question, why? And there are many reasons why. One of them is accessibility to books. In the capital region, in the Albany-Schenectady area, where there are approximately 1.4 million people, there are 21 bookstores. But in the Bronx, New York, where I am a resident, where is my hometown, where there are also, you can show some love for the Bronx, that's what's up. In my hometown of the Bronx, with approximately also 1.4 million people, there are 0 bookstores. 0. And what is the big difference between the capital region and the Bronx? Our demographics. The capital region is predominantly white, and the Bronx is predominantly black and brown.
Parents don't talk to their children about education. And I get it. I so get it. Since the pandemic, parents, or not since, but once the pandemic arrived, the focus wasn't on education. You know what? No, that's not true. Prior to the pandemic, my experience was that parents took more of an initiative in their children's education. I don't know if that was because of the relationships that I had with parents. But I have noticed that across the board, and when I say across the board, I mean regardless of socioeconomic status, okay? Parents are stressed. They're not sure whether or not they're going to have a job when they walk in the door. They're not sure if they're going to get laid off. They're not sure if the business that they work for is going to close because they don't have the money. They don't know if they're going to be able to keep their house. So when you don't know about food, shelter, food and shelter, you can't think about anything other than that. You can't go to that higher level. If you want to use Maslow's hierarchy, then you know the baseline is food, shelter, water. You can't think about anything else until you get that settled. Now, in a capitalist society, in order for the rich to stay rich, there has to be a lower class. There has to be. And since there has to be, and our culture was suppressed anyway, let's leave them down there. In fact, let's change the amount of money that we give to those area codes, and that makes sure that they stay in their environment. they stay at that level.
School funding should not be decided by property taxes or some funky economic equation where rich kids continue to benefit from state aid while poor kids are continuously having food and resources taken from their mouths. Governors, senators, mayors, city council members, if we're going to call public education, then it should be just that. Otherwise, we should call it what it really is: poverty insurance.
So, okay, you got great grades in your school, in your high school. You got great grades in your high school. And then you go to college and you do the same thing, right? Because it's worked for you. And then you get a paper back and it's an F. And you're like, what? I'm an excellent writer. I had straight A's. No, baby. You were just the best out of what the teacher was looking at. Your teacher was not holding you to a standard that would prepare you for the future. And I have struggled with this in the past of when you don't look like the students who you are teaching. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. Let me make that very clear. But when you are from a privileged society and you are teaching children who have not experienced any level of privilege, you have to maintain those standards, the same standards that your parents held you to at this age. Those are the standards you need to hold them to, regardless of where they start. But when you just give them the answers or do the work for them, you're sending two messages. Actually, three. I don't have time for you. You wouldn't be able to find it on your own anyway, because you're stupid. And it really doesn't matter whether or not you know this. How is that educating our students? We have all of this data and from child psychology and child development that clearly states, in fact, I did my master's on this. I evaluated a program at a clinic in an impoverished area. It was a summer program for really at-risk kids. And I was there as an evaluator to boost their grants, right? And all of the evidence that I had before me, whether it was live, whether it was research that I had to do, the background, when you set high bars for children, they reach them. They strive.
The expectation gap is real, and the communication gap is real. So it's been decades of data indicating that teachers tend to have low expectation for students of color, especially black students, Hispanic students, and those who live in poverty. So if you have low expectations for students, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, so to speak, to see gifts and talents in those students. So subjectivity runs rampant, and it is, we believe, the #1 problem for underrepresentation. Then we could talk about, test scores and those kinds of things. So one is subjectivity. What are teachers seeing or not seeing in students of color? And then what measures and instruments are they using? So it contributes to underrepresentation, which is severe.
We are teaching our children that they don't need to strive. I hear students say, "Oh, I don't care." What? and trying to help them understand what they are dismissing. So what message does it give to a child when they get an assignment but they don't do it? Nobody's there to check and make sure that they're doing their work or communicating with the teacher because they're working crazy hours. Teacher has so many students. If he or she were to call this every parent, they'd be there till 8 o'clock. And that's not fair to them either. So a child doesn't do an assignment, there are no consequences other than an F. An F is an abstract idea. A 0 is an abstract idea to a child. They go, you convince the parents to come in. Because you've called them and you've said, you know, this is what little hoo-hoo is doing or not doing. And I'm going to get right on that. Next time, little hoo-hoo does the same thing all over again. Because there were no consequences to his actions. So then conferences come. Why is my son getting an F? I don't understand. Called you several times. Trying to tell you. And then the child receives a consequence, or at least is told that they're going to receive a consequence as a result. But then it's not enforced. What message are you sending to a child when they're failing school, but you're buying them the latest Apple Watch or